670 WOCA. Ocala.
All right, 7 minutes after 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in this Wednesday morning. I hope you're doing well. Reverend, some time ago, now I never knew if this was a rumor or if this was actually true, but somebody told me down at the Don Garlitz Museum of Drag Racing that he has a carburetor on display that could get like 100 miles per gallon, and it was like invented like in the 40s or something like that.
Oh yeah, by his friend. I remember.
Yeah, I remember hearing that, and it was like
his friend Red.
And the story was that anything that could use gasoline that efficiently was not looked favorably upon by the oil companies because, of course, they want to sell more gasoline. You know, so we have that story, and then there was the solar cell stories, and I don't know if these are true, but it's like we could all be surviving on solar cells. There's this airplane that NASA has or the Pentagon has up in the sky. It's been flying without a pilot for the last 650 days. It was in yesterday's news. Totally fueled by solar cells. But yet we're told they're not efficient enough, and then you hear, well, you're hearing that from the electric companies because they don't want you to have free electricity, so they want you to be dependent on them because it's all about the money. All right, jump to another conversation we had with there was a doctor or medical guy. He wrote a book. He was up in Canada. And he was telling us about all these amazing, simple cures for some diseases like cancer, etc. And the one thing I remember saying to him was, if doctors have that information, why aren't they using it? And then he said, wow, you Larry, you don't understand. There's so much money to be made, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, wait a minute. There's a lot of doctors out there. I mean, if there is a cure for cancer, let's say, I'll just use that as an example. And it's something as simple as baking soda, which was one of our guests who said that.
Yes.
Okay, I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying that was one of our guests said. Okay, well, the people who make the money off of the cancer treatments don't want you to use it. And I said to him, wait a minute, every single doctor in the whole country is out for the pocketbook, is out for the bottom line? I don't know. It's an interesting thing. The word fibromyalgia, it was a new word to us a few years ago. We were talking to different doctors about what it is, and I still to this day I'm not so sure, other than it's just an overall pain and an achy feeling. We have on the phone a gentleman who has not only dedicated his life to medicine, but he's an awesome author. I think both parts of his brain must work. I think that's what that means, right? When you can be creative and do science and all that.
Yes, he's amazing.
Dr. Glenn Parris is on the phone. He has a book called The Renaissance of Asprin. It is not what I thought it was going to be when I started reading it. For some reason, I thought it was going to be like a textbook on aspirin. But there is clearly part of what I just said in my intro that has to do with this. And I'm going to let him tell you, because I don't want to ruin the novel part of this. I don't want to issue any spoilers. Dr. Glenn Parris, you have written a wonderful book with this one. It's called The Renaissance of Asprin, for those who didn't hear me. Doctor, thank you for being on the air with us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and good morning to Ocala, Florida.
Where are you? Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Atlanta, Georgia.
Ah, okay. Well, thank you.
Atlanta.
Atlanta. What's the Center for Disease Control is up there. That's the center of the medical...
Yeah, they're a little busy in there, and that was also in the book. The book covers a lot of territory, so I'll tell you a little bit about it. Again, I'm a rheumatologist by training, and I have a very busy rheumatology practice. I'm taking a short break right now between patients, but the story is about a cure for fibromyalgia. Now, again, this is a novel. This is not a textbook. This is not a how-to book. This is not an informational book about fibromyalgia. But we know so little about this disease. We know that it causes a great deal of pain. We know that it interrupts healthy sleep. We know that it interrupts normal thinking and concentration. And we know that it really ruins healthy relationships between people, particularly intimate relationships between spouses and between parents and children, between children and their parents. It really is a disruptive force that leaves no footprints. If you have a heart attack, we can get an EKG and some lab tests and indicate where the heart attack was, what the damage was. If you have a pneumonia, we can take an X-ray of the lungs and take some blood samples, and we can determine what's causing it, and we can target or treatment for that. With fibromyalgia, what we know is that it causes great pain. You are more sensitive. You have hyperalgesia or increased sense of pain on contact, things that normally don't cause pain. A simple touch, a hug, a handshake. These don't normally cause pain, but in patients suffering from fibro, it does.
You know, and I'm not a doctor by any stretch, so I'll just say what I have on my mind, and you can say anything that you think should be said. But people say the same thing about shingles.
Yeah.
Well, no, shingles is a little different. Shingles is a known virus. It's the same virus as the chickenpox. And for some reason, in some people, it is sequestered for long, long periods of time. It becomes latent, dormant, and it hides usually in nerve tissue. And at some point, usually when the immune system is either exhausted or its lowest ebb or stretched beyond its normal capacity, one gets an outbreak of shingles, which is a limited form of chickenpox. And it lasts usually for a week or two if it's untreated, and it resolves. We have some medicines that help speed that process along, but sometimes the nerve remains irritated even after the lesions have cleared. But we know what causes shingles. That's not a mystery.
But now in the story, and for the listeners, we're probably going to go back and forth a little bit between the story in the book, The Renaissance of Asprin, and the actual medical information that Dr. Parris can give us. But in the story, your protagonist has a more affordable way to treat fibromyalgia, right. and the big pharmaceutical companies, they don't want that, right?
Yeah, there's nothing easier to sell than a conspiracy theory. and what's interesting is, I put in some things that are real in my stories because, I've got 25 years of medical experience, and then I put some things that I make up. And I get questions on the real things. On the things that I make up, I don't get a lot of questions. So, it's one of those little...
Oh, that's interesting.
You do have comic relief in your story, though. You do have that air of comedy, too, which really breaks up the action, but really cements home the true personalities of the characters.
Yeah, it's interesting. I try to make my characters very intricate and believable. And often I'm asked if these actually represent real people. And I said, no, real people you'd never believe because they're too complicated. So you have to simplify them a little bit. And if you read my book, you don't get the sense that any of these people are very simple. They really leap off the page. But our protagonist, Anita Thomas, actually has found a gene responsible for fibromyalgia, and she discovers that fibromyalgia actually had a survival advantage at one point in human history, and she figures out what cavemen already knew in terms of fibromyalgia. And what she did was very inexpensive, very simple, and natural. Whereas the pharmaceutical company came up with something very complex, very expensive, and flawed. And
wow.
Unfortunately, this goes with your segue of keeping secrets from the public for the sake of profit. And greed is really the prime driver of a lot of the evils in this world, I believe.
Yeah.
So I agree with you.
We have so many more questions. And again, this is a two-track because both sides of your brain are working. So we've got to work both sides of ours, I guess. We've got medical questions and questions about the story itself. And I hope I don't confuse the two. I hope I don't start making that mistake.
Oh, confusing two is fun. Mix them up.
You must have had fun writing this. Doctor, we have to take a little break just to catch up on the weather and a couple of commercials, but we will be back. I want to hear more. Dr. Glenn Parris is our guest. His book is called The Renaissance of Asprin, and it says here you've been writing as long as you've been practicing medicine, so no wonder you're so good at this. Let me push this button, get this weather started, and we'll be right back. This is The Source, WOCA.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. Clouds and some intervals of sun today. A couple of drenching showers and thunderstorms around this afternoon and this evening. The high today 82 to 86. Partly cloudy overnight, low 69 to 73. For tomorrow, partly sunny with a shower or thunderstorm mainly during the afternoon hours. The high 84 to 88. And for Friday, times of clouds and sun with an afternoon shower or thunderstorm, high 85 to 89. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Joe Lundberg.
Hey, it's Christy with Ocala Mac and PC Repair and Ocala Guest Wi-Fi to let you know we have you covered. We are the only local certified Apple and Microsoft computer company in Ocala. We are family owned and operated. From mobile repair to wireless networks, viruses, new systems, or security cameras, we do it all. Check us out online, ocalamacpc.com, or give us a call, 352-566-8324.
Tell them Nick, Madison, or Mason sent you and get free diagnostic.
Get your internet telephone service from the company that brought affordable internet service to Ocala in the first place. All is Safe is a sister company of Ocala Guest Wi-Fi, a company you've known and trusted for all your internet needs. Whether you need a phone or hundreds, we've got the products and services to meet your needs both now and in the future. Our plans include everything from local and long-distance calling to equipment maintenance and even software upgrades. You can count on All is Safe to give you cost certainty knowing that your bill will be the same next week, next month, or even next year. Call 352-450-8647 today to learn how to cut your monthly telephone bill up to 60%.
Hi, this is JP from Penn Flooring here in Ocala. I would like to invite you to come in and visit our spacious showroom where we have solutions for every style and budget. From wall-to-wall carpet to hardwood floors and tiles, we have an unsurpassed selection of flooring. At Penn Flooring, we've provided quality customer service with a family touch for over 25 years. Visit our website at pennflooring.com or come by our showroom, 1201 Southwest 17th Street, just over the bridge. Penn Flooring, quality customer service with a family touch.
This is a public notice. Local residents can now save thousands of dollars on their next car, truck, or SUV. It's not a tent sale, because no tent is big enough to hold this many cars. It's OcalaForSale.com. Say goodbye to sticker shock. OcalaForSale.com has thousands of vehicles with no stickers at all. But hurry, don't walk, don't run. Just sit down and log on to OcalaForSale.com. Prices and inventory change daily. Offer does not include dealer upcharge. Undercutting, loss proofing, factory surcharge, or delivery fee. See website for details.
News Talk 1370, WOCA invites you to discover your full business potential. News Talk Radio is the perfect environment for your advertising. WOCA's News Talk format pinpoints information-hungry, better educated, high-income adults, so use us to talk to them. Call 732-8000. 732-8000. We're Ocala News Talk Radio. News Talk 1370 WOCA.
All right, 20 minutes after 11 o'clock. Thank you for hanging in there. Let's return now to our interview with Dr. Glenn Parris. He's on the phone up in Atlanta. He has a new book. It's called The Renaissance of Asprin. And so far what we've found out is his protagonist has, I think it was the protagonist, right?
Yes.
Who has created an affordable treatment or cure for fibromyalgia, and Big Pharmacy doesn't want that to be around. So, Doctor, thank you for waiting. Do we learn that? And gosh, if it's going to be a spoiler, I shouldn't even ask you. But do we learn that people are trying to do away with is it Anita?
Anita, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is a whistleblower kind of situation. They realize that this is a woman who doesn't play ball if she thinks that something is wrong. In fact, and it's not clearly spelled out in this particular volume, but Anita actually testified against her dad at one point. So they know that they can't coax her into not divulging something that's potentially harmful to the public. So they do what somebody who's standing in the way of billions of dollars might do. They try to get rid of her.
Is there a romance also in the book?
Oh yeah. She's a knockout. If I do say so myself, I had a blast trying.
See, when you're an author, you are God. When you're an author, all these little people in your book, they are yours.
But I'm a god in the Greek sense. Put heroes in the way. They do what they want to do, and then you get ticked off at them, and you try to get them. You know how the Greek gods were. So not like the real one.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
When you have your patients that you're helping them with their medical conditions, and then you see some kind of scenarios that you might fit into a novel or maybe even into a white paper to help the medical community. How do you gingerly go along with doing that without exposing the person's identity?
Well, you always scrub the information that identifies a person individually. That's the way we do it in research. I do a fair amount of clinical research. So you have the gender, and then you have anything that's pertinent to scientific study. So you want to know their diagnosis, you want to know their symptoms and their signs, their physical signs, lab tests and responses to therapy. So those are the things that you want to know when you're looking at data for large numbers of people. This is the way we've approached many of our diseases. We've made almost miraculous strides in treating rheumatoid arthritis and lupus and gout and many other diseases. Fibromyalgia, we've not had that kind of success with. And we can't even pick out something that we can measure with fibromyalgia. You know, I think sometimes the public gives the medical profession and the pharmaceutical profession a little too much credit that we can come up with the cures for what we do. You know, that's, first of all, you know, doctors are not getting rich. They haven't been getting rich for a very long time. We're not poor by any means. I don't mean to you know, start you know, playing the smallest violin in the world. But you know, nobody is stringing patients along, you know, just to get money out of them. There are some people who do more procedures than they ought to, more for defense than. But that's my own personal opinion. So you know, just, you know, not to be defensive, but it's fun to talk about the benefits of keeping a treatment going as opposed to coming up with a cure or the most economical treatment that you can.
The one thing I'm just speculating on is that your readers will know, obviously, that you are a rheumatologist, and it says so on the back of the book, even though you chose not to put your title doctor on the front of the book. But when they know your history and your expertise, they might put 2 and 2 together and come up with 4, and maybe it's not in this case because it sounds like you're saying there is no cure for fibromyalgia, but they might think that there is, and you're just kind of holding it back a little bit.
Well, you know, I'll be as honest as I can on that question, and that's actually a very interesting question. Number one, we're just beginning to scratch the surface on fibromyalgia, learning some of the differences between the brain and the body of fibromyalgia patients versus the brain and body of the quote-unquote normal pain-free individual, or those who have chronic pain for another reason. So we're beginning to scratch into that world. That's one thing. But the other thing is the MacGuffin, if you will, the trick that Anita learns in this book. Although it's purely fiction, I made it up. I made it up based on 25 years of experience in treating fibromyalgia patients. This is not something that we've ever explored before, so we've never gone down this path. We've never researched this, so I don't know that it's not true. And it's something that, you know, the more I think about it, you know, I've researched it, and it's not something that has been researched before. So you know, I don't want to get into quackery or junk medicine.
Right.
But at the same time, this would not be a bad thing to study.
You have an Uber villain in your book. I like how you keep with all the, you know, current day jargon and things like that, because that really makes the story more endearing.
Uber. With the umlaut over the U.
Yes.
Over the U.
Yeah. So Orson Quirk. You know, I've always loved the name. I've always loved the name Orson ever since I've seen Orson Welles movies. And you know, Quirk just says it all.
Yes,
but he's a really, really bad guy. I mean, you know, when I use the phrase uber villain, you know, I clearly had you know, the Star Wars series in mind. You know, Darth Vader is bad, but the Emperor is really bad.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny.
So,
do you know
this guy is like that bad?
There's this story that comes up every April when we're talking about the Titanic, that there was a book written in 1898, I think it was, called like The Wreck of the Titan, and it's a story that is so similar to what happened in April of 1912.
12, I think.
Whenever the Titanic sank. So it was like this novelist, I can't remember his name, but whoever wrote The Wreck of the Titan, predicted the Titanic. So, you novelists have a history of being somewhat psychic. You never know. I mean, there might be an aspirin cure for fibromyalgia just a couple of decades down the road.
There is precedent for this kind of thing. Sickle cell anemia, and I won't go into all the math and all the science behind it, but sickle cell anemia, as awful a disease as it is, the genetics are such that the trait for sickle cell actually protects you against the worst parts of malaria. So someone with sickle cell trait is likely to survive malaria, whereas someone who doesn't have the sickle cell trait, who's perfectly healthy, is more likely to die of malaria. For fibromyalgia, and again, not to be too much of a spoiler, Anita Thomas discovers that there was a survival benefit to fibromyalgia, and I will let the readers read more about that. But the fun of the book, I think, is the romance between Anita and Jack, and the chase, and of course the Orson Quirk character and his henchmen, and certainly the Lucy Velasquez.
So let me ask you to take off your doctor hat, take off your novelist hat. Let's just talk two men, okay?
Okay.
Robin's not listening.
I won't listen.
She's not listening right now. Okay. No woman is listening right now.
No woman is listening.
You're in your dark room. You're writing your novel, and you got this beautiful protagonist named Anita, right? Do you hate getting up from that typewriter or from that computer?
Oh, yeah. I might for hours.
That's funny.
My wife actually calls my computer the adult.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
She calls it the mistress.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Well, it is such a wonderful story because you've got wonderful scenarios in there. You have great characters.
You could be an actor. Look, he's a good-looking guy.
Oh, yeah.
I just saw
he's
his
hot,
picture.
ladies.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I got nothing on that one.
Nothing on that one. I have a book here. It is called The Renaissance of Asprin. I'd like to give it away. Call me if you want the book that Glenn Parris sent us, also known as Dr. Glenn Parris.
Yes.
And Doctor, how do we get the book?
You can get the book on Amazon.com, and they'll send it to you in 48 hours. You can get it from Barnes & Nobles and select booksellers in your area. But I also want to make sure that everybody knows that some of the proceeds from the book are going to go to fibromyalgia research and support. It's important to keep fibromyalgia in mind. These folks hurt all the time, and everybody's fighting a battle every day that you know nothing about. And keep that in mind before you judge somebody like that.
Absolutely. Well, that's words of wisdom for sure. Well, you were a joy to talk to today. My notes say there's another website called the renaissanceofasprin.com. Is that correct?
Yes, that is. And there's a book trailer that we just shot last month and just got online a week or two ago that is a little teaser for the story.
All right. Well, that's excellent. Well, good luck with the book, and please come back again. You're welcome here anytime.
Just invite me and I'll come back.
If you're ever in Central Florida, we can do it live in the studio with you.
Oh, that's great. Great invitation.
Thank you, Dr. Glenn Parris. Again, the book, The Renaissance of Asprin. We'll take a little break, and we'll be right back.
Larry, thank you so much for having me.
You use the motor oil Dad used, and he uses what Granddad used, yet no one uses what Great-Granddad used, because whale oil's illegal. But if oil's what you need, Napa has you covered. With Castrol GTX for only $3.79 a quart, or 5 quarts and a Napa Silver filter for just $21.99.